Hi, this is Melissa Heinrich, and I'm talking today about a potential examination of customer service opportunities in the financial aid office and a data analysis project that could help improve overall service. So the financial aid office has seen a considerable call volume increase over the past few years as new policies and procedures add more complexity and time to student requirements and submission of required documents. Students have more questions about what is required, how to complete the required documentation, and often have to call in to either our help center or to our financial aid office multiple times in order to resolve the issue. The financial aid staff has been overwhelmed, creating confusion among students and delay in financial aid awarding. Essentially, time is taken away from important processing, answering questions about the processing that come in from students who are confused about what is required. So the proposed project is a deep dive into the reason students are calling financial aid in order to understand what is driving volume. So we have a lot of assumptions around what we think is happening and what we think students are asking questions about, but it's not driven by data. So it is not driven by the actual record of why the student called that would provide important context for the overall historical information. So the project is to gather this data in order to drive a decision, in order to drive improvements that are not based on assumptions, emotion, or individual preference. And really, the reason we are doing this is to improve overall service. We don't want students to have to wait too long to get their financial aid package. We don't want students to be confused. We don't want students to not be able to get through the process, as that means that they may not be able to attend school, and that is definitely not the outcome that we want. Students have to understand how they are paying for school, and the earlier they can do that, the possible. So if we can identify the reasons students are calling, we can then look at our website, we can look at our instructions, we can look at our forms, we can look at how we communicate to the students about the process for potential improvements. We can look at self-service opportunities for those targeted items. We can look at our own internal policies and procedures and what improvements we can make, and really how to prioritize any kind of internal improvements that we could make. And all this could be driven by the data that we find so that we can make the most impact for the limited resources that we have to be able to concentrate on this. In other words, I don't want to be off fixing a problem that could impact 10 students if I could fix a problem that could impact 100 students. And I think that will be reflected in the data. So what tools do we have available? We actually are very lucky that we have a powerful customer relationship management system in our Salesforce CRM. It documents every single time a student contacts financial aid with a question. So we have historical data from the past several years that will show us the time a student called, the description of why they called, and more information in the case notes about the different resolution and things like that. So what we can really get from these reports in Salesforce are the subject of the contact, which is the student, the number of contacts the subject of the contact, which is the description of why the student called, so the question they were asking, the number of contacts per subject, so how many students called about this one particular thing, and then also the number of contacts per student based on the subject. So is this a subject that students have to contact us multiple times in order to get resolved? I ask a question, I ask more questions, I have to call again and ask another question before I can get it resolved. Are these our highest priority items? And all of these Salesforce reports can be extracted out of the Salesforce system in Excel format. So it is Excel based we can do an Excel analysis or import the Excel into another available tool like Tableau or RapidMinder in order to do the analysis to pull out those descriptive characteristics and get the information that we want. I think another interesting aspect of the Salesforce system is the customer service or the customer satisfaction survey information. So every case that a student makes includes an opportunity to provide feedback. So they receive a survey. Are you satisfied? Are you not satisfied? On a scale of 1 to 10, that kind of thing. So I think that we can then tie in customer satisfaction information into the subject and the description of why students are calling. That will then give us better weight and a better idea of, not just from a volume perspective, but from a customer service satisfaction perspective, what areas that we really need to focus on first. So the idea would be then to have all of this information and look and say, hypothetically, okay, so students called about ready to verify 100 times. Students called about, they're getting their refund check 5 times. So that would be clear then that we need to examine our ready to verify process. We need to look at our website to get clarity on the instructions. We need to make sure that students have self-serve information so that they can find the answers themselves easily. We also need to look at our process to see if we have baked in some intricacies and some complexities that don't necessarily need to be there. And, hopefully create a situation where the students can more easily get through the process, submit the documentation. Financial aid can concentrate on the processing of that documentation instead of answering a high volume of questions about how to get the process started or get through the process. And then students will receive their financial aid in a timely manner. It won't be a barrier to retention or anything like that. And the workload and the overall morale of the financial aid office will improve as we can get back to really making sure that students have the money they need to pay for school. So some challenges. Volume. So financial aid gets an enormous amount of calls per month, tens of thousands of calls. And so the volume on the data set is going to be very, very large. And so one of my recommendations for the project is to really pick a targeted time where students are asking the most questions, and that would be in our busiest time, which is the lead up to the fall rush. So in order to not be overwhelmed by all of the volume in the CRM, a targeted time frame where students are asking the most questions about getting their financial aid completed would be recommended. There's also some data challenges with the spreadsheets that we'll have to do a lot of data management on. The subject and description, which really holds the meat of why a student is contacting financial aid, is a free-form area that students can complete, or that staff types out. So some of it is variable based on how the staff is characterizing the information, and so we'll have to do some data mining and some data preparation to build in some consistency, I think, with keywords and different things like that. There are some keywords that we will definitely recognize and tie to processes that will be able to complete the project. Buy-in, I think, from a financial aid perspective, financial aid is has a variety of different services, has a variety of different units within it, and I think that some buy-in and some cultural buy-in will be needed to kind of like look within and really identify, the problem isn't with a process that we have to do because the federal government mandates it. The problem may be with how we communicate about it or how we handle it internally. So I think that once we get the buy-in of the improvements that we can make and the customer service advances that can be had, I don't think that will be a problem, but that's definitely a challenge. And then also implementation. I think the analysis project will be step one of a very exciting process to hopefully improve the student experience. So the implementation of the information that's found and of the analysis project, I think, will be another project in and of itself, but is really exciting and one I'm really looking forward to in order to improve the student experience. All right, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with you more.